Hi, my name is Tully and I'm one of the trustees. It's my very great privilege to be one of the trustees of the Foundation for Democracy and Sustainable Development. A lot of people have been talking about the importance of sustainable development for democracy, and I'd like to build on that argument a bit more as well. Sustainable development is really important for democracy because if we don't address issues of climate and issues of short-termism and issues of crises and issues of rationing, then a world in which we've not addressed sustainable development crises is a world in which democracy is not possible. Automatically we will be in a world which will be authoritarian, top-down, where we have to limit and control our reducing resources of water and carbon, where we actually have to manage the earthquakes and the natural disasters that come from climate change. So if we don't address sustainable development, we won't have democracy at all. It's interesting because there was a great plateau between 1945 and 1972 where things didn't really seem to move. In terms of the energy markets, in terms of politics, there was a great status quo. And under conditions of status quoism and where there's not a lot of change, democracy does really well, because tomorrow and 5 years and 10 years in the future is going to be like today. So when you make decisions for the next 4 years, for the next democratically elected term, you're also making an optimal choice for 10 or 20 years' time. Now, under conditions of high volatility and uncertainty, that relationship changes. So it becomes very difficult to make longer term decisions, and you are constantly, as a politician or a corporate lead, making decisions on the basis of a 24/7 media, of crises that are happening around you, and suddenly things, for example, an earthquake or a tsunami in Fukushima, suddenly affects you as a Midlands businessman in a way that it didn't before. So these complexities and these uncertainties under volatile conditions means that it's really, really difficult to take the long term into account. So in order to help people do that, we need to introduce some certainty into the situation, and institutions and structures are really good at doing that. Now, it's difficult to get politicians sometimes to think about the longer term because the incentive structures are, quite rightly, that they are accountable to their citizens for the next 4 to 5 years. However, there are other institutions, so Commissioner for Future Generations, but also the Audit Committee are very interesting. Select committees in Parliament, like Finland has it, but also the GAO, the General Audit Office of the United States, has seen its role move from oversight to insight to foresight. So it sees its role to promote longer term thinking across the whole of government. So it's not just politicians that need to think about the longer term, it's also all the institutions of government at local levels as well, and also in our communities. Well, I talk a lot about the Welsh Act of Future Generations for 2 reasons. Because it has a resonance as a story, people get it. You can talk about the importance of changing governments to be long-term. You can talk about the importance of systems thinking, of making sure that different ministries join up. So when you're talking about water and education and families, you're not just talking about ministries, you're talking about how these issues affect citizens. But in fact, it's very difficult. This all feels very theoretical. But when you talk to people from different countries around the world about the Welsh example, their eyes light up. They suddenly understand what you mean. And also, it gives them something that they can actually work towards as well. We realize that there are institutional reforms in the short term that we can make that are actually going to genuinely make a difference. The other reason why I think it's really important to talk about the Welsh example is because of something that I've learnt here today, which is the relaunch of the Foundation for Democracy and Sustainable Development event that we've had here tonight. And that's the fact that they have really succeeded in getting the money to follow the policy and strategic structure. And that is something that very, very few governments around the world manage to do. And that is absolutely critical to the success of a longer term strategic framework for government, is to make sure that the money follows your priorities. So I'm very confident about the success of the Welsh Commissioner. I wish them all the best, and I certainly hope that as we move into the SDGs, that a lot of other countries, when they're implementing the SDGs at the national level, think about the potential of a commissioner and these conversations to implement the SDG out to 2030 in their countries.